One of the things that I really appreciated about my conversation with Jennifer was she was a consummate professional. I mean, literally, she took ownership up front and said, this was my decision. The buck stopped with me. I made a very bad decision making this acquisition. What did I do wrong? Let me think through this and learn from that. Throughout the course of our discussion, she talked a lot about failed integration. But I couldn't stop thinking about the fact that it wasn't necessarily failed integration in my mind. Sure, integration was complicated, but it was a choice issue. It was an issue of actual fit. It's like this typically happens in a marriage, for example, right? You idealize the other person, you get married, and neither one of you are bad people, but you project onto each other this whole idealization. You don't have a relationship problem, you had a choice problem. You didn't have the fit up front. So Jennifer didn't spend enough time thinking about what problem does this acquisition solve. Like a lot of acquirers, she created a solution in search of a problem, right? Here's the solution. I'm going to make this acquisition. Now let me back into what problems it's going to solve, as opposed to forging a plan saying, I have these growth issues. I have these problems. I can solve these through acquisitions, but I need to be very thoughtful about the acquisition candidates or targets that I go after. So you may be a CEO running your business today, and everyone and their brother's doing acquisitions, right? You get on LinkedIn, you get on Twitter, you read all this stuff. Yeah, I did this deal, I printed money, I went out and bought something on it cheap and turned around and sold it 5 years later. Everyone's getting rich, and that's all well and good. And there are certainly a lot of examples. I can think of scores of examples where people literally printed money doing deals. They were in the right place at the right time. They were able to buy on the cheap, turn around and sell it. They bought into a declining market, sold into an accelerating market. There's a million different reasons why these things work out. But I think those acquisitions tend to be the outliers, because if you sit down and you talk to 100 different CEOs over the years that have made acquisitions, I think more times than not, you're going to hear, yeah, I learned a lot, but probably I shouldn't have done that. And what we're going to talk about today is how you can avoid finding yourself in that situation. So let's go back to first principles again. Number one, you're trying to increase cash flow and decrease risk. Those are your two primary concerns as CEO. From that stems your business strategy. How are we going to grow cash flow? How are we going to decrease risk? Over time, let's say you run some sort of a residential services business in the Southeast United States, right? You're based in Georgia and Florida, and you say to yourself, well, I need to grow geographically, and I can do that in one of two ways. I can greenfield some operations, right? I can lease a new facility, hire some folks, and grow it organically, or I can go out and buy an existing operation, right? And either of those two avenues for growth are very, very valid. Now the question is, instead of sitting back, relaxing, and waiting for somebody to show up at your door, you need to get out there and get active. You need to build an acquisition pipeline. And before you ever start thinking about building an acquisition pipeline, you need to get very granular on what it is that you actually want to acquire. You have to think about, what sort of size am I willing to go after? Do I want to buy a $1 million or a $5 million tuck-on? Is a $10 million acquisition transformative for me? Am I doing a $50 million deal? So you think about revenue from a broad-based perspective. What size of a deal are we looking for? Economics, right? We have to think about cash flow. Like, are we looking at businesses that have the similar economic profiles to ours? If we're running a 25% EBITDA margin, are we going after firms that have 25% EBITDA margins? Or are we going to look for ones that are perhaps less efficient, maybe a 12% margin business? And what comes along with that, of course, is probably a fixer-upper. What's the customer profile? How similar are the customers of my firm versus those of the targets? Culture. Culture is a very important aspect of this. How similar is this business from my business? And what I mean by that, when I think about it from a cultural perspective, is, as I said earlier in our discussion, employees tend to self-select, right? Firms with high growth and a lot of potential for upside tend to attract, all else being equal, A players. those firms tend to attract the people who really want to grow. They want to work hard, they want to make a lot of money, they want a lot of career upside, they want advancement, so on and so forth. Firms that have done $2 million in revenue per year for the last 30 years do not provide a lot of upside for employees. And those employees, of course, tend to self-select. A lot of A players are not going to stick around at this small $2 million shop that's been doing $2 million forever. They're going to leave and they're going to go off to a firm that provides them a lot more opportunity, right? So when I think about bare bones basic cultural matches and cultural mismatches, a lot of times high growth firms have one specific culture. Mediocre or just kind of middling firms that aren't growing and providing a lot of opportunity will have a very different employee base, and that's fine. But when you combine those two, similarly to what Jennifer faced, it creates a clash because, of course, the lower performing employees want the same sorts of benefits as the high performing employees, although they don't necessarily want to do the same amount of work. I can go through a massive list of cultural issues that I've experienced over the years and I've seen firsthand. But that's a very basic ground floor problem that people need to think through. Like, how are people compensated? When I think about culture, to me, that means like, what's the deal between the employee and the company, right? What's the managerial structure look like? Is it command and control? Is it decentralized? What do the employees expect to be doing on a day-to-day basis? How are they treated by management? How much oversight's involved? There's a lot that goes into culture, but at the end of the day, for me, it's, what's that deal? Like, how do we operate as employees? What can we say? What can we not say? How do we operate? What do we expect to do autonomously and not? And firms are wildly different on this spectrum. So understanding that is extremely important because integrating two cultures can be very difficult over time. And I think a lot of times acquirers will look at this and say, well, wait a second, we've got an awesome culture. These guys are going to be excited to be a part of our organization. And that seems to make a lot of sense on its face, but in practice, that's not always what happens, right? So the target is brought into a firm that operates very, very differently. They feel alienated, there's anxiety. A lot of times you'll get a lot of defections, for example. And when you, as the high growth firm that's running things differently, start to treat those employees in similar ways that you're treating your own, sometimes they get frosted because they're like, hey, this guy's not me. Why is he getting treated like that? So I'm not a cultural expert. I am an observer of these sorts of acquisitions. So it's important for you to think about culture. We'll be filming the remainder of the Buy-Side Masterclass series in the coming weeks. So if you have any requests or questions, feel free to put them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer them. And finally, as we get into the more technical aspects of buy-side M&A, I'll be able to provide you with a variety of different items, such as a template LOI, a buy-side due diligence checklist that I think will come in handy as you go out and attempt to make acquisitions on your own. I put a link in the description section below. You can click on that so you can be notified as soon as those are ready to go out. Here at Potomac, we love to kill it for our clients. And I think that education is the cornerstone which allows our clients to make the best decisions for themselves. The more you can understand about the nuances of how strategic acquirers work, how the operations of private equity firms work, and the psychology and the tactics of an M&A transaction, the better you're going to be when it comes time to pull the trigger. If you own a business and you're being contacted by strategic acquirers, search funds, private equity firms, and you're trying to size up what you might do, take a step back and give us a call. We'll help you forge a plan, whether that exit is a year from now, 5 years from now, or 10 years from now. We'll help you think through a plan that is specifically tailored to your financial goals and objectives. So please contact us directly. I've put a link to the contact form in the description of this video, and you can also contact me directly on LinkedIn. And feel free to share this masterclass series with somebody who you think might benefit from it. Again, I'm Giannamore. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you on the next one.